The following program may contain scenes that are disturbing to viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Professional wrestling is a rowdy scene where increasingly violence has become part and parcel of the weekly soap operas that take place in bars, clubs, and church basements across Quebec. How did it come to this? Again, we warn you that some of the images are graphic and are not appropriate for younger viewers. With the conclusion of our story, here is Leanne Castellino.
Many observers of Indy wrestling are worried about the lack of rules in Quebec.
Today, just about anybody can put on a show and has absolutely no restrictions.
It wasn't always like this. The 70s were Quebec's wrestling heydays. The Rougoux, Edouard Carpentier, and the Vachons carried the mantle. There was a huge fan base, and TV shows kept the scene strong. U.S. promoter Vince McMahon stepped into the fray in the 80s with his roster of World Wrestling Federation stars. He snapped up the top talent, TV contracts, and fan base, leaving the independent scene virtually flat on its back. Fast forward to the year 2000. The WWF has morphed into the WWE. The ECW, or Extreme Championship Wrestling League, shook things up again.
Once the ECW really caught on and had a very, very solid fan base, even though they were engulfed in the WWE, they left a real imprint on wrestling and a hardcore fan base that kept demanding more.
And that in turn gave rise to the proliferation of small, ultra-violent copycat leagues. What's left of the old days? Wily wrestling warriors like Jacques Rougoux, who struggles to put on family-friendly shows. He's concerned about the lack of limits in wrestling these days. He spends his time running a school in Montreal's North End, teaching kids techniques to avoid serious injury. Wrestling in Quebec used to be regulated by a provincial athletic commission, but that changed in the 90s. The government decided it would not regulate it anymore. Since then, wrestling circuits here have had free reign.
My reaction to that is that it's in the trend of the ultimate sports that we're living in right now.
Mario Latraverse is the director of the Régie des Sports de Combat, the government body which oversees combat sports like boxing in Quebec.
We regulate boxing because there's a section in the criminal code that forces us to do it. But it doesn't say anything about wrestling.
He thinks Quebec was right to stop regulating pro wrestling. He argues that the outcome is decided in advance, so it's not a combat sport that needs provincial oversight.
When was the last time you attended a wrestling event?
I can't remember. It's been so long.
So we showed Latraverse excerpts of recent IWS events, including the young wrestlers from Ontario who admitted they would never be able to do this in their home province.
Did that look controlled to you at all?
I think it's madness in control. They know exactly what they're doing. They have practiced this. They know exactly what they're doing.
Latraverse says he was not shocked by anything we showed him on our tapes and still sees no need for regulations.
Should we put a regulation in place that's going to cost zillions of dollars to regulate a show that 200 people are going to see?
Are you concerned at all by the lack of limits?
I am concerned, but there's a limit to the government involvement in these things. Are we going to regulate all sports?
Ontario regulates wrestling with an iron fist.
The promoter is required to put up a $1 million public liability insurance 30 days prior to the event, along with a license application form and the license fee to get a sanction.
It's a system Hayashi says works and protects wrestlers and fans alike. Hayashi does not tell wrestlers what to do in the ring. He hasn't had to.
Well, if they're going to be jumping into barbed wire or fluorescent tubing, which we haven't had that problem, I would definitely look at that as with concern. possibly advise the promoter that unless he has medical people at the venue, that I wouldn't sanction the event.
Do you think it's something that should be monitored?
You know what, if they're having a lot of problems with the wrestling or a particular aspect of it in their province, maybe that's something that they should look at, but then maybe it's a police matter as well.
In Quebec, it's a debate that has barely begun.
Anything that's not overly regulated, health and safety and the follow-up care of the athletes or performers is going to be a real issue.
There are over 500 wrestlers in Quebec if you figure all the organizations in Quebec alone. To me, 500 is a justifiable amount to have a body to control the extent of what they can do or what kind of show they can put on to limit the possibility of injuries.
How do we protect our wrestlers? Our wrestlers, we always have a nurse present, and our wrestlers are all trained. You know, they're all trained professionals. That's what a lot of people don't realize. This is their job. You know, they went to school for a year to learn how to do this, and they're trained to do this. So our wrestlers protect themselves. You know, that we don't protect them; they protect themselves. It's their job.
Wrestlers like Firestorm say they're aware of the risks, but he thinks he should be free to set his own limits. It's his age that's slowing him down.
At 30 years old, I really don't want to go and wrestle like every day in the week and not seeing my family, leaving my day job, and maybe asking myself questions like, when my contract will be over, what will I do? Maybe I'll be in a wheelchair or something. So.
Stay with us. On Assignment will return right after the break.